Iran can launch a drone for about $35,000. The United States, us, might spend $4 million to shoot it down. So the question is, are we actually losing money in this conflict, or are we watching something bigger play out globally? So let's break it down. What if what we're watching right now isn't really a war, but a demonstration? A message not just to Iran, but to China, the rest of the world, about who actually controls globally. Everyone online keeps saying Iran is draining the United States by sending cheap drones, but that might completely miss the real strategy behind what's happening right now. I'm Andre, aka Mr. By the Mile, a union truck driver who likes breaking geopolitics down in plain English. Tonight I'm going to explain drone economics, a real strategy behind this conflict, and why China's watching very closely. I'm not a politician or a think tank analyst. I'm just a truck driver trying to make sense of the world. And I'm doing it in having done my homework. That's what's most important, is making sure that we do our homework. Now, costs for weapons doesn't determine who wins wars. Industrial capacity, logistics, and economic size are what matter more. And we all know how big the United States really is. Iran's military spending, China's military spending, what are they? Well, Iran's is about $10 to $20 billion range, annually, and relies heavily on missile drones and proxy groups and asymmetric warfare. And look at you guys, their goal isn't to destroy the United States. Number one, because they can't. Number two is they just want to raise costs, stretch defenses, and create political pressure. We got to think of this like throwing thousands of $20,000 problems at $1 billion systems, and we all know that's a losing scale. Currently, the Strait of Hormuz, I believe is how you pronounce it, is a position of leverage that Iran kind of has on its side, and we're going to get into that. And our annual spending, back to that, we already assessed Iran's, up to $10 billion annually, but China has a max of about $340 billion, and United States between $850 and $997 billion. So we think in terms of, they're spending less. Iran is spending less money, but we're spending so much money to counter those things. Number one, because we can afford it. Number two is we're protecting billion-dollar pieces of equipment, of assets. So in the grand scheme of things, these war planners, right? These generals, this is how they're thinking. Let's spend the money to protect our assets. But not only that, the United States has far superior technology today than anyone else globally. Now, I'm sure you're hearing a lot online, as I am myself, about the 2002 simulation called the Millennium Challenge. And in this exercise, the red team was representing Middle East power, similar to Iran's. It used asymmetric tactics like swarms, right? Small explosive boats and cruise missiles fired all at once, and establishing planning, mines in narrow waterways like Strait of Hormuz, and low-tech communication methods to avoid U.S. electronic surveillance. Those tactics overwhelmed the simulated U.S. fleet, and about 19 ships were actually sunk in the scenario, which would have meant roughly 20,000 casualties if it were real. The exercise was then reset and changed, which created a controversy about whether the game was rigged, right? Because everybody thought, well, hey, dude, this is rigged. But here's what that war game actually proved. It didn't prove that Iran would win a war. It proved something a little different. A weaker country can cause serious damage using asymmetric tactics based on basically really cheap weapons, right? Swarm attacks. That's the strategy that Iran plans to use because they know they can't win a conventional war against us. It doesn't include things like full U.S. air superiority, long-range bomber strikes, cyber warfare, satellite surveillance, and U.S. submarine forces that extend the campaign over weeks or months. And that's what the United States' strategy is. See, we have so much in reserves. as far as oil goes. That if we create pandemonium in the Middle East, everybody suffers because China, parts of the EU get their oil from there, from the Middle East, from the Persian Gulf. So while Iran can threaten, just by threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz, just the threat alone raises prices. But for us, the United States, we depend on our own system. We can sustain ourselves for a very, very long time. The United States is, like I said, the largest oil producer, and it imports far less Middle East oil than it used to. And we have the largest strategic petroleum reserve. So the reality is that locking up and disrupting transport in the Strait of Hormuz would not only hurt, but cripple Asia's industrial economies first. Now, I've also heard that China is going to move on Taiwan. Japan will swarm them if that happens. We've seen over the past few months the much tighter, stronger alliance between Prime Minister of Japan and President Donald Trump. And they said that they would back us up, and also said that if China was to move on Taiwan, that they would strike swiftly and aggressively. So in the end, the United States isn't the one paying the highest price. A conflict in the Gulf rattles the entire world, China, even Japan, Europe. But thanks to our own oil production reserves, we stay insulated, strategically in control. That's the real power of global leverage. And Japan, as I stated, is an ally. They're ready to pounce on China if they even attempt or hint at taking Taiwan. If you're watching, make sure to drop a comment. I always read them. Looking forward to it.